Okay, everyone, we have a goodly number of people, and welcome to our September 19th NHF brainstorming um, Zoom meeting. And this one should be especially interesting on vaccines. I want to make a few announcements first, and then, as we usually do, and then turn it over to Charles Frohman. He'll take it from there. I'll probably have to leave this meeting somewhere in the middle of it, just because I am right now in Vienna, Austria, and I'm starting attendance at a meeting of the European vaccine people, which is ironic that we're having this session about on Zoom about vaccines right now. But it's this entire weekend, and then I return home. But I was supposed to go the previous week, actually previous 2 weeks, to Chile for the Codex Committee on Pesticide Residue because NHF has a strong presence there. But quite honestly, between going to this meeting, going back to the States, going to Chile, I'd have been bouncing all over the place. And it was kind of a bridge too far. So instead of my going, we submitted a very comprehensive 27-page document, thanks to a number of people help pull it together. And then when will it be? Middle of November, the more important meeting is Codex Alimentarius Commission, and that's where NHF will really be present and will be fighting what was discussed at the Pesticide Residue Committee at length, because there's no way we were going to win at the Pesticide Residue Committee with the people we were up against, but we have more of a chance at the Codex Alimentarius Commission. So let's put all our weight where it has the most, effect. So that's it. That's it on the Codex front. The vaccine meeting this weekend will be interesting, and the next time we meet in October, I'll tell you more about it. But they're a strong group of people, these. And the last time I went to one of these vaccine committee meetings was, and this is not associated with Codex, by the way. I don't want you to get confused. But last time I went was 8 years ago. So I'll be meeting a lot of old friends and some new ones, I suppose. So that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Charles so he can get going. We have a couple of great speakers today, and Charles will tell you who they are.
Yes, I will, Scott. Thank you, and good luck at the vaccine meeting in Europe. I'll share my screen as I usually do to set the context. And let's see, let's hide the meeting controls so I can see my tabs. So that's the promo you're looking at, and I put that in chat. It's always a good idea to click it so you can follow along and learn more about the guests, read about them, and read about the topics. And we try to put the context in the text below. And the first below thing that provides context is this great meme I saw on X, Twitter, where, self-thinking people go to get actual information. And it's highlighted wonderfully. This is why we want informed consent, to say no thanks, no matter what the recommendations are from our betters, because these betters have lost trust, and I don't think they will regain trust, to be honest, at least among those who think pink, orange, yellow, green, blue. Who wants your killed human cells, animal cells, toxins, allergens, antibiotics? No, thanks. And especially when you read the links in the text about our first guest, Rita Palma, and that first red word, RFK just came out with his recommendations for MAHA. If you click that red link, and again, this promo is in chat, so you can click it on your own time. I comment about the report, complaining mainly because we've become the main wireless radiation lobbying org, but we were very active during the pandemic. I got a bunch of congressmen to co-author a letter covered in the Daily Caller and Epoch Times and Robert Malone Substack with the help of our attorney for vaccines, Greg Glazer, on the call. Welcome, Greg. With questions FDA could not answer when they were trying to extend the clot shot authorization for toddlers. But I did praise the recommendations for fixing the science, so at least we'll have less frivolous recommendations. They'll have to go through more hoops, more honest science with inert placebo. So I think in the long run, the MA effort's going to, at the very least, you can complain about the details. There's going to be some stronger science behind it. So in the long run, I think we'll be better off with vaccines. Not that it won't be easy. At least in the Senate, we know about the haranguing of RFK in that previous hearing, but Senator Johnson, in that next red word released, did release a bombshell, the kind of unvaxxed comparison study that our NICE Act seeks to get more publicity for, which all of them show the same thing, more chronic disease among the over-vaccinated. And that's probably why, among other reasons, in that next red highlighted link there for the third year in a row, more parents than ever are electing exemptions from vaccines, but not in the 5 states that don't allow religious or other exemptions. They offer medical exemptions, but anyone in the movement knows that's a worthless exemption because it requires your doctor to agree that these vaccines are dangerous, and none of them are thinking independently enough to have that kind of thought. So if you don't have a religious exemption, at least you're in trouble in those 5 mostly blue states. And we have an expert on that issue, Rita Palma, who is consulted by people in New York and across the country on how to get just such a religious exemption. And I put in the final part of that paragraph, to me, the most obvious reason for a religious exemption is that I don't want to rely on murder for my health. Not to mention that some of these aborted fetal lines are of the opposite sex. And I don't know about you, but have you heard any science on what that does in the long run to your kid? I'm going to say no thanks and choose informed consent until the scientists actually give us useful information. Um, Let me just hide this reading control so I can see what my tabs are. Here's the Substack I wrote about the latest haranguing of RFK. So this is not just an issue for those parents in those 5 states. This is a national issue because we're not going to get much help in Congress. They really do want their donations from pharma and will do their bidding. And we saw in the ACIP hearing yesterday and today, just do a search of ACIP at X, you'll see all the great clips. Yeah, there's some marginal good news. Mothers will get to wait a month before this ridiculous hepatitis B vaccine. And, you know, MMR will be separated from varicella. I didn't even know they were combined. Each one is bad enough on its own. But with that, I will stop my share and let Rita tell us about the short-term plan to at least rescue those parents in those 5 states without religious exemptions. And we have a bill in Congress to use some education funding as a leverage to make the states behave. Rita, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so yeah, I'll talk about the federal level progress that we've made, and then also the state level, though, you know, state progress in New York is particularly exceptionally and unbelievably challenging. But in June, the Religious Liberty Commission met for the first time. So me and my team scooted off to Washington, D.C., attended the RLC meeting, and then we proceeded to make appointments with about 15 different congressional representatives over the period of 3 days back in July, and we have definitely made some progress. I'm sorry, I lost my video. How is that? We've made some progress. As you said, we have a federal bill that we came away from DC with in July. Greg Steube authored the GRACE Act, which stands for Guaranteeing Religious Accommodation in Childhood Education Bill. And what that does is withholds federal funds. I think the language was slightly changed to federal education funds if the state does not offer a religious exemption to vaccines. So it's a great bill. And what it does, it forces the individual states to come up with their own religious exemption law, a law that was stolen from us back in 2019 in New York. It was literally stolen from us. It was an illegal vote that was, it came of coercion by the Speaker of our House. He bullied the assembly members into passing it, whatever the case is. So the GRACE Act guarantees religious accommodation for vaccinations in each and every state. Now, we realize fully, of course, that is a heavy lift because you have to get 60 in the Senate. And because of the filibuster, it's really hard to get that. So what we're using that, though, is an education tool and also kind of a marketing tool to show the rest of Congress, our senators, et cetera, that this issue has changed. And now we have a bill on the books that validates what we have been asking for so long. So we're busily trying to get co-sponsorship for that bill. But in the meanwhile, we have had a statewide success story in New York. As you were saying, the medical exemptions in the states that don't have religious exemptions are oftentimes broken, and they're broken no more than in New York State. So back when I used to help parents with religious exemptions, they would come to me and say, you know, I have a medical issue with my child. They had anaphylactic seizures, this, that, the other thing. So I want to file a medical exemption. And I would tell them, well, that's great, but what we're going to do is file a religious exemption for you and put the medical exemption to the side, because even 10 years ago, it was almost impossible to get a medical exemption. Though in New York State, the actual statute, the black letter law, is extremely simple. But New York has messed around with it and gotten away with it for so long that now there's all kinds of criteria that a parent has to meet. And what New York State also does is they intimidate, hassle, coerce, and make life miserable for the doctors that do write these exemptions. So the doctors are scared off. And, you know, it wasn't really that much of an issue to focus on because we had the religious exemption. Anyway, so, you know, fast forward to about a year ago, there was a case in Oceanside, New York, where the young lady, 16 years old, had 7 medical exemptions, 6 from attending physicians and 1 from a walk-in medical care clinic, all MDs, that stated she could not get the shot. In fact, she wasn't able to get the shot. No doctor would give it to her. So CHD, God bless them, Children's Health Defense, they filed a lawsuit. And we won the preliminary injunction. And if anybody knows anything about a PI, it's pretty hard to get. And I sat in the courtroom and I listened to the reasoning of this judge who, you know, said that we met the criteria for likelihood of winning on the merits of the case. So he granted a preliminary injunction to the child and to the young lady. And he basically stated that we're probably going to win the case. So that was a really big win. And that kind of opened floodgates for the medical exemption. So right now I have about 7 pages of emails to go through because I posted that I do know some doctors who are brave enough and feel that they're protected by the CHD attorneys and they're protected by the federal decision and by law and, you know, by God to write these exemptions out for children who are suffering, for families who are suffering. Children have been out of school for several years. Some parents have actually harmed their children because they were so desperate to get them back in school that they did vaccinate them and they hurt them. So that's a huge win for New York. We received a decent amount of publicity off of it, and it's opened the conversation to vaccine harm, which is, you know, a tricky conversation to get into 6 years ago, not really anymore with the advent of COVID and all the other nonsense that has gone on over the past 5 years. All the lies that are being revealed, you know, Trump statements, and obviously led by Bobby Kennedy Jr. So we're very thankful to have him in as an advocate. in the federal government. The environment in the federal government is so much more favorable to us right now. It's really exceptional. And while things move slowly, and I agree with you that the ACIP decision was not very consequential yesterday, I think there's more in the future. And, I think this methodical approach that they're taking kind of makes sense. I want to run to the finish line, of course, and so does everybody who knows, the truth about these things. But the fact of the matter is that most of America is not really on board, and they have to slowly realize, what has been going on behind the scenes at Big Pharma and the CDC and the NIH and IOM, and most Americans don't even know what those three-letter agencies stand for. So we have to kind of bring along the American public slowly and change hearts and minds. I think that's essential and that's vital. So that's what we have going on statewide. Well, we also have a bill to protect the medical exemption. It's held by 2 Democrats. We have 2 Democratic supermajorities, but I don't think it's going anywhere because the Democrats just don't do anything for us. That's just how it works. So we have approached Democrats in Congress. We've approached Democrats in our state, and it's just pointless, which is one of the reasons I moved on to going to DC, because New York State politics is really kind of a lost cause. So what we also have in the works as far as federal solutions is we have put out to probably 20 different congressional members a request for Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education, to support a religious exemption to vaccinations for school attendance. We have that in the works. We're pretty optimistic about getting a lead on that letter. As a matter of fact, I have an appointment after the Zoom with a congressional member that I have high hopes for. So that should be coming out soon. The HHS letter that was produced a couple of weeks ago, I think that was a result of our work, because we got the idea of asking for a position statement from Bobby Kennedy back in June. We've been pursuing it. We got our lead congressman, and he never quite did it. But then this letter came out. So we think there's some sort of connection there. So the HHS letter recommending that the federal government hold back funds for the states that do not offer religious exemption is very powerful. And of course, New York has ignored it. Perhaps they have even doubled down on their medical tyranny here. But the federal government will win in the end, because they have billions of dollars. And as we all know, the Democratic states roll over for money, to put it quite simply. So that's what we have. We have a few other irons in the fire that I can't really talk about, just because I'm working on a team and I don't know if everybody would like to share everything. But we are definitely making progress. What we're finding is the majority that's now in the federal government is very welcoming to our views. In fact, we've run into many staffers, and if anybody has gone into these offices, pretty much all the staffers are between 20 and 30 years old, right? So many of them took the vaccine, and many of them are vaccine injured. Several congressional members are vaccine injured, and they've got an axe to grind. So we're optimistic for the future. I think every day, and probably everybody on this call can see it, we do take a step forward, and we do gain people. And once we gain somebody, nobody's going backwards. Nobody's going in the other direction. Once you know, you can't unknow, as I always say. And for every member, in whatever position they are in the world, joins our side, the other side loses somebody. So anyway, that's my summary. And at the I have to jump off at about 1:25, the latest, because I do have a 1:30 Zoom. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions at all. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Rita. That was well done. Charles, what are we doing on time then? If Rita needs to leave on the Q&A?
Oh, we'll be fine, because 10 minutes after that time, Rita, is when we like to end at 1:30.
Okay.
So
right.
Once Carrie finishes, we'll go straight to Q&A and have a long Q&A session like we always do. So thank you, Rita. And to set the context for our next speaker, I did want to share an old NHF campaign that still works. And that's we don't lobby too much in the states for more federal in nature, but we do have generic emails for states on this issue and the wireless issue and supplements, nutritional supplements. And I think it's more like artillery firepower. These are generic bombs. I can't say that word nowadays, right? Online, they're going to get you. That any state politician can amend different codes to strengthen the exemption fight. And then you have this behind you, then you go in and lobby in person for more specific bills. But this is how we help indirectly with a more generic email that I'll put in chat. But also on the promo that you got emailed. If you scroll down, you'll see a link to the campaign, so you can find it there as well. And I share that because Carrie Bigford is the outreach coordinator for, or director for, the Texans for Vaccines Choice. And most of the vaccine advocacy is on the state level. It's becoming a bit more federal for various reasons. But Carrie's specialty is communication. And Rita mentioned a thought that most of us have or have developed from advocacy in those state legislatures, and that is Democrats are so in the pocket of pharma, or I would say actually more public health. The idea that we should take it for the herd immunity from vaccines theory, which is unproven. And so it's really hard to get them off the fence to work with us. But that was shocking, Rita, to hear that there are vaccine injured staffers in DC and Congress. I remember working with a bunch of House Freedom Caucus staffers during the pandemic who were so scared because they didn't want to get COVID vaxxed, and they couldn't find a restaurant in DC to serve them because you had to show your card, and they were just commuting over to Nova to eat lunch. So it's good to see some momentum in Congress. But Carrie, unlike most of us, has had success with independents and Democrats. And so we wanted to have her on just to kind of go over some basic communication techniques to grow our brand and movement, because we can't win on health freedom on any of these environmental insults unless we grow our coalition and get more Democrats on board. And that goes for the other health freedom issues too, and the opposite way. You know, I mentioned I've become a wireless lobbyist. Democrats are better than Republicans on wireless. And, you know, Republicans are in for a shock because MAHA, the report, does include a study on wireless. So these communication techniques that Carrie's going to discuss, I'm sure will apply generically to any health freedom issue, but we need to open our mind to talk to so many people that we think won't be with us, but they might if we used good communication techniques. Isn't that right, Carrie?
Yes, absolutely. Outreach is a skill like any other skill that you can develop. No one is born out of the womb knowing how to communicate effectively, especially on a challenging, polarized, politicized topic like medical liberty, or even the more ephemeral EMF that people really don't understand. We aren't, taught in our schools, unfortunately, how to have these communication skills, but they do exist and you can achieve them. And at Texans for Vaccine Choice, I had the wonderful honor of being able to create a complete volunteer training program that includes a foundational piece of communications for advocates. And, my background was mental health. I spent, 14 years as a clinician in private practice with mental health. And I developed these communication skills. And then my kind of side hobby, I guess you'll call it, was medical liberty advocacy due to my own personal experience with injury and wanting to help people to be able to have this conversation more effectively and, most importantly, in a loving and productive way. If you're having a confrontation model, that's not effective outreach. Your end goal is to discover what your partner's position is, why that position makes sense to them, and what they need to shift into a different space and to be able to achieve those goals in a loving and connected way versus an adversarial way. So that comes down to, first of all, our training class is open to people that are in Texas and out of Texas. So if you want to really dive deep into effective communication skills for advocates, We do offer that class as outsiders. You can go to our website, texansforvaccinechoice.com. You can click the button that says train with TFVC, and you can sign up to take the class with me. It comes with a book that goes along with it. But there are 4 basic steps. I won't get into all the details because my class is like 2+ hours long, and it does come with a book. It's a very robust and real communications class. But the overarching 4 steps are: prepare yourself to do the work, connect with your partner, gain their willingness to hear it from you. You then inform them specifically about something that is, this is very important, not nuanced, easily verifiable, objective reality, and that affects them regardless of their actual choices, okay? Or even better, affects them when they choose to engage in that intervention, right? So that affects the vaccinators more than the non-vaccinators. And then after you have prepared, connected, informed, you allow, okay? We do not get to choose for other people what they do. We have to allow them to have their own autonomy. That is what the choice in Texans for Vaccine Choice means. And for some advocates, that goes back to the prepare step. So when you're preparing, how do you know you're prepared? Okay. You know that you're prepared to have this conversation when you have some idea of what you're going to inform them with when you get to that part of the conversation. So for Texans for Vaccine Choice, we have distilled it down to 5 main lanes that we hit first, which are the lack of liability, the lack of informed consent, the different classification and safety standards, the vaccine schedule itself, and your legal exemption rights, okay? Everything else we call the weeds. And we don't go into the weeds until we've hit those 5 lanes, because all 5 of those lanes are absolutely objective reality that they can Google and have Google to verify in front of me. That's okay. I want them to engage with me. So that's a big part of prepare. The other part of prepare has to do with you and your discipline. So much of outreach success depends upon you and your ability to get and stay emotionally regulated, which means that you are no longer vulnerable to the emotional winds of your partner, and you can stay focused and on task regardless of their emotional reaction, okay? In our training program, we actually provide what's called the Coping Skills Corner, which is a whole module of self-led, evidence-based coping skills to help those advocates who are either struggling with preparing, right? They're not regulated enough to begin. They lose track and get emotionally hijacked every time someone invites them to conflict. Or the advocates who struggle to allow, who are too emotionally attached to someone else's choice. Those coping skills are excellent to help you with those 2 issues. So after you're regulated, after you have some idea of what you're going to say when you get to inform, you connect, which is your process of using a series of connection and communication skills that we teach in our program to help you gain your partner's willingness to hear it from you. And during the connect step is when you're gathering the information that you need to inform them specifically. So you are using different tools, different questions, different techniques to ascertain what their position is, why that position makes sense to them, because it totally does, and what they need to shift into a different space. And those things will vary widely between individuals, which is why we don't have set specific things of what those are, but you connect with them and gain their willingness to hear it from you. And one of the big important overarching lenses, there are several lenses, right? I guess my favorite 2 are receptive, neutral, resistant, and the 7-38-55% rule. So when you meet a new person to help you immediately with connection, you want to go through the lens of, is this person receptive, neutral, or resistant to me, right? Out the gate, before I've said anything, how hard am I going to have to work to connect with that person? So that's that receptive, neutral, resistant lens, because that will frame for you how cautious you need to be moving forward, or whether you can kind of push a little bit faster, right? So that's lens number 1. Lens number 2 is the 7-38-55% rule, which was not my idea. It came about before I was even born by a UCLA psychology professor, Albert Mahabrian, but it states that it's not what you say, it's how you look and what you sound like when you say it. Only 7%, and it's a communications truth that I have tested thousands of times, that my army of 100 volunteers has tested tens of thousands of times. It's true. 7% of your partner's meaning of your words only come from the words. So only 7% of the meaning come from the actual words as your partner perceives it. 38% of your meaning comes from your voice tone alone. 38%. The most perfect, magical words in the whole world get you 7% of the puzzle. But 38% of that person, of that perception, comes from your tone of voice alone. And 55% comes from your facial expressions and body language. I meet advocates all the time that are frustrated and have been agonizing over trying to find perfect, magical words. They have scripts of responses and all of these words that they're trying to use to bring people to the light. And I kill their joy when I tell them the best, most magical, perfect words only get you 7% of that puzzle. The best case scenario is that those words have gotten you 7%. Those same advocates aren't spending any time being aware of how they're presenting to that other person, how their tone of voice sounds, how their body language and facial expressions are reading to that person. Humans are hardwired to seek context through nonverbal cues like tone of voice and body language. We are not going to change the way that human brains are designed to connect and communicate. Instead, we're going to harness that power and we're going to use it to our advantage by being aware of this 7-38-55% rule. And we're also going to use it to our advantage by being aware of whether someone is automatically resistant, neutral, or receptive to us, right? There are lots of specific communication skills that we actually teach that are step-by-step instructions. I do not have time to address those today, but for those who are interested in learning what those are and diving deep and becoming a master communicator, take the class. It's well worth the time. It's well worth the money when you come in outside of Texas to really understand how to have this conversation with others, okay? So you've connected. They're into you. They're interested in hearing from you. Then you move to the inform step. And I cannot stress how important it is that your first pass of information needs to be something that is not nuanced, that is objective, reality based, and that affects those people when they choose to engage in the intervention more than it affects those people who decline that intervention. And the reason for this is that asking someone, barring trauma, right? Because most people in the movement, myself included, came to medical liberty through trauma. Trauma woke me up to what's really happening in the vaccine program, the dangers and pitfalls that happen to the vaccine injured people through trauma. But if you have not experienced trauma, or if you have not recognized that your weird health crisis started after a vaccine, you're asking your partner to have a worldview shift. That's what you're doing. The worldview today that's pushed everywhere is that vaccines are safe and effective in any amount, in any combination, at any time, for any reason, okay? That's the worldview. And humans in general don't like to shift a worldview because it creates all kinds of cognitive dissonance. It creates all kinds of challenges where they have to reconcile their past choices and their future choices through this new worldview lens. And so they resist. You need to expect their resistance because they're going to resist, because their resistance is their way of protecting themselves from the fear of being asked to change. Because once they say yes to you, they're going to have to be different. Their mindset's going to have to be different. Their behavior may have to be different. Their choices may have to be different, but they are going to have to shift when they say yes to you. So until they're ready to make that shift, they're going to resist, right? So we train a lot about dealing with resistance and handling resistance with grace and allowing that resistance just to be. And that is one of the reasons why our first pass of informing are always something that is solid enough and not nuanced enough to be pushed back on easily, right? People can and do resist the reality that the vaccine recipient themselves is the sole guarantor of all legal, financial, and physical risk. I just allow them to openly resist, and I ask them, great, let's ask Google. And Google will tell them, yes, since 1986, the vaccine manufacturers have been shielded from liability thanks to the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. And then I sit there and I wait, and I watch them marinate in that reality. Same thing with the lack of informed consent. Actual federal laws have been passed to restrict your ability to be made aware of the risks inherent in becoming a vaccine recipient. Most people don't know the risks involved in taking a vaccine because they literally have federal laws restricting that information from being shared with them. I think I'll share my screen now and show you this, one of our awesome graphics. So let me scroll down to it. Let's see. Can you guys see this? Okay. So this is a graphic that I took directly from the CDC. Whoops. That I took directly from the CDC. Go back. There. Nope. Go back. Nope. That's not the right one. That's the one. I'm not going to touch it. Okay. So this is directly from the CDC. This is from a document called The History of the Vaccine Information Statements. It's on cdc.gov. I ask people to search for it all the time, and they're blown away by it. The only thing I've added is our logo on the top, okay? So you can see visually that the original 1986 law had very robust informed consent disclosure. And then in 1993, they gutted it and took away 60% of that informed consent right of the consumer. And then here in 2016, they did a rule revision where they now only require the 1993 information to be provided online. So they don't actually have to provide you with anything written anymore, and they're still on the right side of the law. Most recipients aren't aware of any of this. They hear safe and effective. They think safe means no injury. They think effective works all the time, right? And so they don't understand. And so that graphic is really handy. All of our volunteers get copies of this, and they have one laminated that they pass around and share with everybody. But it's a really powerful graphic to show someone else that there is a lack of informed consent, and they can push against that as much as they want, but it's still reality. It's not my opinion on vaccines. It's not my individual choices on vaccines. In fact, I recommend that you don't share your individual choices because it makes you more likely to become defensive. I recommend that you not ask someone else their choices because it often makes them feel too vulnerable, which makes them more likely to become defensive. And defense mitigation is a huge part of successful outreach when you're dealing with a difficult topic like this, where there's so much ideology behind it. It's almost a religious, fervent ideology behind it. You have to approach it thoughtfully and with strategy to help unwind some of that information. And then after you have connected, right, after you have informed them, you need to allow. The other place that I really see advocates struggle is this allowing piece. They get too attached to someone else's outcome. I did this for years too. I understand that it comes from a well-intended place of wanting to protect that other person from potential harm. But the paradox of outreach is when you can let go of your need to control their choice, which is absolutely what you're doing when you're too emotionally attached to someone else's choice. When you can let go of that need, that is the moment that you become most able to help that person shift their choice. Because humans can feel when they're trying to be pressured. Humans can feel when they're trying to be controlled. And when you can embody the space of allowing, right? From a regulated nervous system, you're allowing that resistance to just be there. They become more willing to consider what you're saying and less resistant and oppositional overall. So there's a lot of details in outreach, but it is a skill. It's a skill that you can learn. It's a formula that is absolutely reproducible because we have reproduced it over and over and over in Texas. And since we have applied this communications approach to our outreach, we have completely transformed our already wonderful work in Texas. We already had great legislative advocacy, but since we implemented this, we have passed 12 protective pieces of legislation. We have trained almost 100 volunteers. We do over 60 planned outreach encounters statewide every single month, and that number grows by the day. And not only that, but we're gaining traction in all the spaces we need to gain traction on, because we're able to more effectively communicate why other people, even people who want to continue to vaccinate, have a buy-in on wanting medical liberty laws to stand, right? And that's what it's all about. If people decide to stop vaccinating, that may be a bonus, but the ultimate goal is to get them to understand their individual buy-in, regardless of their choices, of why they want the government out of those choices. That's what it comes down to. And that's a much easier bar to meet. And it's a much easier goal to have. And I know that the more you know, K-N-O, K-N-O-W, the more you know, N-O. So the more that I can educate people about the pitfalls that exist in the vaccination program and keep it in the objective reality lane that they can verify easily, the more they're going to shift on this spectrum. But I don't get to control how fast they shift. I don't get to control how much they shift either, but I can control how I show up. I can control my discipline with what I inform them with. And I can absolutely control my own regulation and prevent myself from being victimized by their dysregulated emotional lens. So that was a very high level summation. Again, the best place to become a master communicator on this topic is to take our communications class. I teach it live every 3 months. The next one is October 30th. You can go to our website, texansforvaccinechoice.com. I'll go ahead and share the screen and show you where you can find that. Is it gonna let me? There we go. I guess it's not. Hold on. Let me get out of this. Nope. Escape. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to this. There. Perfect. Okay. So this is our home screen coming up right now. You can go to where it says, let me move this, get involved, and then you hit on train with TFVC. And you click on grow my confidence if you're an outsider right here. And then here it is, our virtual advocacy training. So the best place to learn is to enroll in our class, because you'll get a deep dive into all of the steps, and you'll get lots of step-by-step plug-and-play communication skills that are applicable to lots of different scenarios and lots of different types of people. But the 4 main steps are: prepare yourself. It is so important that you're prepared and ready to go, that you connect with your partner before you inform them. If you inform too soon, you're just some random human who has no influence and sway over their decisions. You want to wait until they want to hear what you have to say, and you have become a person who has gained the influence to inform them. And when you inform them, you want to inform them specifically about something that is not nuanced and that is evidence-based, objective reality that can withstand their open resistance. And then after you've informed, you allow. You stay regulated, you allow your partner to absorb that information and trust that it will shift them where it may. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's the gist.
Thank you, Carrie. That's perfect. And I know there's a lot of interest by people who are attending here to attend your virtual.
It's a very useful class.
Yeah, it sounds it. We have a number of people who have their hands up. Let me go to my co-host here, Charles Froman, first of all. Charlie.
Thank you, Scott and Carrie and Rita. Great presentations. I think this is really needed to open our minds that, with MAHA, the momentum, we don't have to be filled with such umbrage when folks don't agree with our brilliance or don't see the catastrophe that is the major medical market as it stands right now. I wanted to share my screen real quick here to give a demonstration of what you can expect if you choose to work with National Health Federation in lobbying, whether it's for the vaccine issue or the wireless radiation issue or any of the other health freedom issues that we are active on. And the reason I'm sharing this is that what our National Coalition for Safe Technology has adopted is something I learned when I left lobbying to teach high school history, sort of psychology of communication. It's called the zone of proximal development. So I build my presentations on where the politician is at right now. So I look for where they've been, where they live, their committee assignments, and the presentations don't start from where we want to go, but from where the politician is now. We look for common ground. You're on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Okay, well, this might be relevant to you. You have a college degree, worked on a family farm. Well, this assault on farms from wireless may be relevant to you. And you grew up here. Well, this might be relevant to you. What's going on in the cities? And I share that, Carrie, to ask you a question. Has that idea ever come up in your communications? Not to give them just the generic handout. Here are my brilliant points, but knowing that you're on this committee or you've done this bill that's related to what I want, is that communication technique? Is that ever come up in your discussion of what works or doesn't?
Yep, it's part of our prepare step. And specifically because again, we have 5 main lanes of outreach that our volunteers do on a regular basis in our training program. One of them is what we call field trips, which is government meetings. And so that means you're engaging with either the city council, the commissioner's court, your city, your county level government, or you're engaging in your state level government. We don't do a lot of federal engagement at our state level organization, but when we are meeting with legislators or when we're meeting with city council members or when we're meeting with players that we know about ahead of time, we absolutely do our background research and learn more about that person that we're trying to reach out to. Or if it's a board, all the members on the board will do a dive into ways that we can bridge build and, find common ground easier with them. It's harder to do in the wild when you're just out there reaching out to random humans because you don't have the opportunity to know who they are before you meet them. But certainly when we do planned outreach encounters, absolutely in a legislative capacity, whether that be a city level government, a county level government, or a state level government, we definitely dive deep into who those members are and how can we find common ground with them even sooner and be more prepared to reach out to them. Yeah,
and
it's a great technique.
Thank you, with Rita. Has that been part of your outreach too, to sort of find out a bit about the politician and target to find some common ground, and how has that worked for you?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. We follow them on Twitter and Instagram to find out their positions. And of course, we approach those who agree with us, primarily, who are predisposed to really be accepting of our message. So, I'm fine. Honestly, I love everything that you're saying, Carrie. To plug that into New York, I'm trying to figure that out in my head, but we are up against just such tremendous resistance here. And, they won't even see us about the vaccine issue. But, still in all, I'm going to jump on your October 30th because I want to learn. I find it fascinating, the 55-38-7 breakdown. I never heard of that.
The 7-38-55%. 7-38-55%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I guess the overriding lesson is you better be nice. And
it's not even so much a matter of being nice. It's a matter of treating your partner in a framework that they want to be treated in. And it's not just nice because, again, because the words are 7%, I use very direct and clear language. Like I say, it sounds like you're wrong. But you do it in a way that in a tone of voice and a body language, it's relaxed. And when your tone of voice and your body language is relaxed, you can use much firmer language than like flowery words with a tense body language that will land so much worse. And for New York or deeply entrenched states, like again, I was from California, and California shares the similarity of the state legislature being a lost cause. So what California is doing is just trying to drum up more public support in individual conversations. And so for you in New York, you could build a grassroots army of advocates who are trained to have these conversations in communities, because as those community members have their minds shifted and their awareness increased as to why they have an intense buy-in into keeping the government off their medical choices, then those people vote. And here in Texas, we vote people out all the time. We had a New York Times article come out where like the best quote was a lady from the Terry Burke from Texas Immunization Project, where she said, even during the latest measles outbreak, she couldn't find a single politician on either side of the aisle who would come out and say that vaccination was the best thing since sliced bread, because it was political suicide. And it is absolutely our fierce, unrelenting grassroots activism that has made that possible. We have so many supporters that understand where their individual buy-in, even people who continue to choose to vaccinate. We're Texans for vaccine choice. And we're very aware of that. And we're very allowing of people deciding what they want to do. But the ground we stand on is we don't want the government to tell us what to do. We want a free and clear choice that we can decide on our own. And because of that, I mean, we tell a candidate that we're going to primary them the next time we can, an elected official, we do it and we get them out. And we've been doing that for 10 years. And so that's another thing that you can do. Even when the legislature is captured, you can build towards taking it back on the long game through community outreach. Like, because people want to have this conversation. I've been reaching out on medical liberty topics for a quarter of a century now, which blows my mind. But I never imagined that it would be such a welcome and mainstream conversation as it is now. And now the key is to apply a little bit of discipline so that those people who are maybe, curious don't feel turned off by thinking that I'm here to shame them, judge them, or blame them for a choice that maybe is different than mine. But I mean, that's what I would do, is I would focus on the people, reaching as many people as I could, and invite those
doing. And people of influence, the doctors, the attorneys,
absolutely.
Doctors in particular, because now we're armed with the August 12th medical exemption victory. So now that opens up the door for our people to have, conversations with the doors closed about, real vaccine injury, what their child went, and they're protected. So we are definitely experiencing some success with that. Thank the good Lord. And, we are also talking to school administrators. Because after all, the way that I see it, this is an education issue in New York. You're not forcing me to vaccinate necessarily. You're just punishing me with the severe consequence of having my child kicked out of school, which is completely outrageous to link those two issues. So we're making some progress in that. The legislators, like you said, are too captured. I like banging your head against the wall. I can't even deal with it anymore. And there's just so many. So many of them here. The super majority in
everyone, Rita, we're going to have to move on to Q&A because we're already into the event. This is all hugely interesting to listen to the conversation between you and Carrie. But
sorry,
we have some.
We'll have to talk offline, Rita.
Yes.
It could go on forever. And it'd be hugely interesting, notwithstanding. Just to repeat, for those of you who came in after my announcement, I'm here in Vienna, Austria for a vaccine conference. The National Health Federation should really be called the International Health Federation because we do so much global work. But I'm here, and this is actually helping me with the speech I have to give at this event. So I appreciate it, Carrie, and I appreciate your comments too, Rita, but we do need to move on. Now, Charlie, did you have something procedural or was it just another question?
I'll wait till others.
Okay. Well, the first person who had their hand up was actually Debbie Silverman, but she lowered her hand. Debbie, did you want to ask a question? You're there, but you're muted.
I don't have a question. I didn't mean to raise. Sorry.
I just thought your such a loyal follower at these events. So we'll turn to, thought I'd give you the better, the better sense here. So Linda, you're next. So
yes, I am very saddened to have to hear and deal about this issue on vaccines, which is a crime against humanity, a real crime by definition when it's done to babies at day first after delivery, because the immune system is not mature. It starts to be mature after 2 years old. And I was trained at the Institute in Immunology. So it's something that is easier to change the constitution of any country than a mentality which has been implemented and forced for over 3 generations. So as a official in the vaccine procedures, based on my research, I am 100% against, especially for children. And there is only one exception. You are adult, you are healthy, you have good immune system, and you want to go for vacation or for conference in a place where there is an epidemic. So then you can be vaccinated 15 days before going, and then you can go and enjoy your lecture. And so I lose my time to hear those things again and again. Is a premeditated crime. That I can sign this and I can defend this. And I have pictures and slides to show to you how the immune system works. Thank you. What to tell you?
Thank you, Linda. Was there a question for either Carrie or Rita, or was it more a general statement you made? Are you there? Okay, let's go. Thank you, Linda, for that.
And just to tell, I gave an oath. I had a degree also on public health with honors, to devote my life to defend not my health, but the health of people, but any means. So I never go against my oath. Finish. That's it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Linda. And John, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate your presentations, Rita and Carrie. Back in 2000, I was diagnosed with prostate and colon cancer. And when I did my deep dive into what was going on with my health, I found out that simian virus 40 was in the smallpox vaccine. It could be a contributing factor to my cancer of prostate and colon. One of the things as I continued to go down this deep dive is I noticed also that parents were being forced to give their children chemotherapy and radiation, which also causes cancer, and they were also taken away from their parents because of medical intervention from hospitals and other doctors, pediatricians, saying that's the way to go. We know that those types of therapies are only good in about 3% of the cases. I see that we're trying to go after these mandates and get exemptions for vaccines, but what about the parents' rights and our own right to refuse medical intervention that we know is harmful to ourselves and to our children? How can we stop that as well? I know this is a piecemeal situation because I've seen, thank God, I've seen an awakening since the pandemic, because I've been preaching against vaccines for over 20 years now. Back when I found out that vaccines were a problem, I thought they were a panacea, but they're actually more detrimental to your health than they actually help your health. So how are we moving towards a health freedom amendment in each state? Because I know right now it's impossible to get it into the Congress right now. There's so many different factors. And of course, Big Pharma has about 15 or 20 lobbyists to each congressperson that's there. So what are we doing for people to be able to have true control of their health?
Who is this question directed to, John?
Either Rita or Carrie or both.
Got it.
Well, in Texas, we lobbied quite strongly during the most recent 89th legislative session for SJR 34, which was a Texas constitutional amendment that will codify in our Texas Constitution that parents have a right to raise their children as they see fit. And the broad language also applies to medical choices that they can make. That will go on the ballot in November for Texans to vote on to adopt or not. So I agree with you that that is an issue. And I agree with you that we are working at the state level to resolve that. We're trying to go the overarching state constitutional route, the amendment, so that we can get a broad coverage for lots of different things. Whereas with the medical liberty laws, we've kind of had to do a piecemeal, take our ground by inch with lots of different laws that we passed and lots of different bills that cover and protect against lots of different things. But for the parental rights, we want to get an overarching constitutional amendment that kind of gets the government off our backs and creates more opportunities for parents to practice autonomy. So that's what we're.
What I've run across is in our congressional adventures, there is a congressional member who is in the very early stages of writing up a medical bill of rights. That the point that you raised should definitely be included, to be forced to administer chemotherapy to your child to meet or get them taken away and have the chemotherapy and radiation, whatever big pharma thinks they, is going to help them, forced on this child, I think is fundamentally wrong. So I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if the congressional representative is willing to take input, which I would assume she is, I'll happily share my contact information with you so you can email them as you see fit. Ask for something to be included that you think should be included.
I'm in the state of Florida. I just want to let you. I used to be a former New Yorker, but I'm in the state of Florida.
I could tell, actually. I could hear that accent. So, yeah, I have a Rita Palma at MyKidsMyChoice.com. That's my email. Please give me a little time to get in touch with you. I have hundreds of emails right now of people to return for medical exemptions, but yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm not doing any direct work on it, to be honest with you, but I absolutely have heard, this one congressional representative, and, I know her well enough, and so does everybody on this call, to know that she's not going to stop. She's not going to quit. And she will let us all know when she has it written up. So I'd be more than happy to, help you out with that as far as contacting her and, offering some input. I'm sorry, my camera keeps going out. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that is.
That's okay.
Thank you, lady.
I might, Scott, add in chat. Today's promo, if you scroll to the bottom, has our link to the campaigns, and that campaign on state vaccine policy does have a number 5, a medical practices code expansion. So at least unvaxxed patients can't be discriminated against in the hospital or by doctors. Is that a fix for what we're discussing? Perhaps not totally, but federally, our Medical Freedom Amendment also would guarantee choices. But there are a number of solutions, and Carrie, I like yours. So this is a long-term effort where we need to cooperate to find what works. There's many paths to freedom.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Charlie. Phil, you're up next. Phil Silverman.
Thank you so much. And Carrie, your presentation was spot on. I really appreciate what you were saying. First, I have a question. Can you give us some more examples of like what a non-nuanced information might be?
Yeah. So when I say non-nuanced, you want it to be something where you can give them the gist in 40 seconds or less. So like lack of liability, the vaccine recipient is the sole guarantor of all legal, financial, and physical risk. Lack of informed consent. Actual federal laws have been passed to restrict your ability as a vaccine recipient to be made aware of the harms in becoming a vaccine recipient. Different classification and safety standards. Vaccines are not pharmaceutical drugs. They're classified as biologics. They have an entirely different safety set of approval metrics, and those differences don't benefit the safety of the recipient in any way. The vaccine schedule itself, the vaccine schedule has exploded in recent years. They keep adding more and more shots, without hesitation. What does that mean for you? And then, of course, your legal exemption rights, which will vary greatly depending upon the state that you live in.
Thank you.
But you want
And
it to
then
be
just
something short and not nuanced. And ideally, like when I picked Facts of Focus, I make sure that you can Google it. I want it to be something so easily verifiable and so concrete that someone can sit in front of my face and fact check me. If you have to build a bridge to build a bridge, like ingredients is a great example of something too weedy. People want to talk about ingredients, like, oh, the ingredients, but the average person doesn't understand enough about those ingredients, period, to have that conversation. If you have to like pre-educate them to get them to understand what you're talking about, it's too nuanced, right? You can use ingredients with someone who has demonstrated that they're able to have that conversation, but most of the people out in the wild, they don't know the difference between injected and ingested aluminum. They don't know what SV40 means. They don't know what polysorbate 80 means. They don't even know what the blood-brain barrier is. They have no idea about any of that. And so ingredients in general, we call it the weeds, where you can get to that topic, but you want to hit something that can be easily resisted against and stand strong. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So just a couple things I want to suggest or add. So my passion really was piece of gristle that I chew on constantly is how to reach liberal folks.
Yeah,
I'm lifelong radical leftist actually, and so I'm kind of a unicorn in the movement. So just a couple things is like you mentioned finding common ground. And I think that's really important that, I mean, I have so many friends who like won't eat a Dorito because it has genetically modified corn in it, but will not think twice about injecting fully genetically engineered products into their bodies and their children's bodies. So to find common ground and talk about that. Also, and I know this is a sensitive thing, but when talking with liberal folks, to keep religion out of it, like not to talk about God and the Bible, and because there's a lot of people who that's not an issue for, and they'll just create more resistance.
Absolutely.
And then finally, rather than big government, to talk about big business. I mean, frankly, they're kind of the same thing, but liberals are more concerned about the control of big business. Conservatives, in a nutshell, are more concerned about big government. So just in terms of choice of words, to try to use language that's not going to automatically trigger your liberal partner. And I really appreciate what you were saying when you're like that, when you're having a conversation with somebody, that they're your partner.
They are your partner.
Yeah, that's really meaningful and important. And finally, I remember there was a doctor here, a person that was working in our movement, Rachel Corbett, who's an NLP practitioner, and she spoke about how the way somebody receives what you say is your responsibility. And I think as a movement, we have to take some responsibility for the fact that that so many people can't hear what we have to say, and we have to figure out how we can reach those people. It's our responsibility.
Absolutely. That's why being prepared and being emotionally regulated is so important. And there was so much about the class I didn't get to go into. It really is a very complete, robust class to teach you how to be an impactful advocate and communicator about medical liberty. But one of the things is, the red lights, the things that you don't do, right? And one of them is assume your partner shares your worldview is always a red
Right.
light. It is always a mistake to assume your partner shares your worldview, even if there's lots of common ground already. You want to leave open space and remove as much judgment and bias from yourself as you possibly can. Because again, in an outreach equation, you are the only part of that equation that you can control, right? You cannot control your partner, but you can help co-regulate with your partner. By you being able to be regulated, by you being able to stay there, open-hearted, willing to hear what they have to say without judgment, that more than anything else removes barriers. Here in Texas, I get to go to the Democrat offices. I'm the one who's speaking at the liberal groups. I came from California, a very liberal state. There are so many people on the left who don't understand what medical liberty is about, and they don't understand their buy-in. And I mean, I have a whole module on reaching out across the aisle, because you do want to take different approaches and you want to try and mitigate the prejudgments that that side has had created for them, so that they can actually see who you really are and hear what you actually have to say. But I'm with you. This is a human cause. The right to have body autonomy is a human issue. It does not be political. It's amazing to me how political it's become, but it's a human issue. And I want to talk to all the humans and reach all the humans that I'm able to reach and help them understand why it matters to them to have a say. I make no attempt to control their choice, because that's not my lane, but I'm here to help them more fully understand why it matters in their world, regardless of their choice. I'm with you.
Thank you.
We need all the
Thank you
humans.
for what you're doing and how you're doing it and who you are. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Phil. I just want to add one thing. I think it's very important at some point you need to bring up the fact that big business and big government go hand in hand.
Oh, absolutely. The regulatory capture issue is massive.
Yeah, but it's beyond that. It's not even just regulatory capture, it's growth. One feeds the other, and government will lead to big business and vice versa. And if you don't get rid of both of them, then you're doomed to failure.
Absolutely.
Okay, Charlie Froman, did you have something quick to say? I may need to go before long.
I'll wait till
over
the other
gavel
two,
to you.
Marie and Charles.
Okay. Charles Ford, you're up next.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Great presentation. I want to share a little personal experience that feeds into the presentation model. I spent 5 years of my life calling on every city, every county, every utility board, government agency in the state of Alabama. And what I learned doing that was to tell the same story the same way each and every time. And I approached it from a 3P presentation. Be present, be prepared, present. And when you present the same way each and every time, because in this social media driven world, people are going to talk, and anything you say differently will discount the value you've presented to those people. The second thing is tied to that is have a presentation document and be consistent with that document with each and every presentation. And as you go along, you'll add things, you'll take things out, and it'll evolve, and that's fine. But that is vitally important to do those things. If you do those things, then you bring the truth, and the truth always resonates. And that's why you get progress. It's because you're telling the truth, and the truth will resonate, even to those who are guilty by it or the ones that are convicted by it. And being consistent in your process, consistent in your presentation, I'm telling you that works. And I was able to build an insurance company from scratch to where it became the 97% percentile holder of all cities and so forth in the state of Alabama, and was based off learning to do the presentation in that manner. And part of the preparation, you're exactly right, and I congratulate you, is know who you're talking to the extent that you can. Know who they are, what they do, what their hot buttons are if you can find them, and where they stand on things. Okay, then I'm going to conclude with this. There's two obstacles in your path. One is fear. People are driven by fear. And you are going to run into that landmine head on. And so you've got to be aware that the person you're talking to, in the end, emotionally, if they're in favor of the status quo, is doing it basically out of fear. And they're full of fear. The other thing is when you present and tell the truth and it resonates, you have to watch out for the second deadly landmine. And that is you're basically at some position telling somebody that has believed these lies, that they've been lied to, and they're the stupidest thing in the world because they bought into all this. So you have to avoid that landmine as well. And that is the difficult structure. You get past those two, you're going to win every time. Those are your two biggest obstacles: fear and the fact that you end up inadvertently are telling somebody, well, gee, you're just the dumbest thing that ever lived because you went along with this. So you got to, whatever you do, you have to avoid those two landmines. And again, I think your presentation is great. And my real world experience for doing that for 5 years tracks totally with what you're doing. And I hope you just do more of it. And thank you for taking the time to present today.
Those are absolutely concerns. And a huge part of our program is about overcoming fear, mitigating risk of defensiveness, which is part of that, oh, I feel dumb now, right? Because you don't want your partner to feel that way. You want to be able to allow grace, right? You want to be able to allow the grace to be there. And the other piece about being prepared, we call those props. So like in outreach, you, the advocate, the brave, bold, courageous advocate, you are the magic. Your voice, your words, your body language, you are all you will ever need to shift anyone. But sometimes you want a little help. And so anything that isn't you is called a prop. And so Charles was talking about having, prepared props. Like that slide I showed you earlier, that's one of our props that elucidates our second fact of focus. Each one of our facts of focus has its own individual standalone prop that our advocates can carry on their person or have on their phone, because I have digital copies for them available too. So if they feel like they need backup, they can instantly employ a prop and they can use that to help further advance their cause. So I agree, it's important to be prepared, but a lot of the outreach that we do, and my favorite type of outreach, is just random humans in the wild that I have never met before. That's my favorite skill building activity, because it really is the whole breadth of, it could go anywhere, and I kind of like that dynamic. But the props are great because they give you another opportunity to underscore what you're saying and to have humility as you're unveiling those props, because that person in front of you, they're not like ignorant in a negative sense, they're ignorant in the truest sense, where they weren't told the truth. And so it's not really their fault that they didn't know the truth. So it's very important to have grace and compassion as you're doing this work, and to kind of keep your snarkiness off to the side. Or if you struggle with keeping your snarkiness off to the side, to use one of our coping skills as part of your prepare step, so that you can be a little softer when you're actually doing the work. Because you're right, if they feel like you're judging them, they will get defensive, and that defensiveness will cause a breakdown in communication for sure.
One last quick comment. I know we have others, so I won't use up too much time. I did a presentation once on that municipal, and as I was going through the presentation, the board was looking at me, and it was the situation like, oh my goodness, my zipper must be down, or I've got a booger stuck out of my nose. I mean, they were looking at me so weird. And finally, I stopped halfway through the presentation. I said, is there something wrong? And they all broke up laughing. And I'm thinking, okay, what's the joke? And they said, well, you did a presentation a couple of nights ago down the street, and the local television cable recorded it because it was part of a city council session. We watched the show last night. We watched the tape. And they said, we wanted to see if you'd tell the same story the same way. And I said, well, did I? I said, yes. I said, now we know you must be telling the truth, because you couldn't possibly lie that perfectly 2 times in a row. So I just share that piece of human nature with you.
Yeah, it's part of the prepare and outreach bridge from our prepare step. You want to have an idea of what you're going to say when you get to that place, so that you can be consistent, because you're right, people talk, and you want to be consistent and accurate in what you're sharing. So prepare sounds like a passive step, but it's a very active step. Just like allowing can sound like a passive step, but it's a very active step also.
Okay, real quickly, Rita has to leave. So if there are any last statements, Rita. Are you still with us? I don't see you.
Oh,
but-
yes, I am. Yeah, this has been very educational and fascinating. Carrie, I'm definitely going to connect with you offline.
Great.
Yeah, so we're moving ahead. We're talking actually to the DOJ and HHS about different federal solutions. But I just want to address really quickly, because the medical freedom community has been in a bit of a discord over the issue of a federal exemption or keeping things to states, and there's been some pushback against, possible federal bills like the GRACE Act or a federal executive order. And the way that we see it is the way that the GRACE Act is worded, and or how an executive order would be worded, is that federal funds would be withheld if the state did not create their own religious exemption. So the federal government isn't really getting involved per se. They're just saying that in keeping with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act or whatever state laws apply that are akin to that, the state does not get money from the federal government. So it's kind of a no-lose situation. If the state wants to forego billions of dollars, well, I guess that's their decision. If they consider that the religious exemption, it's so important not to have one, even though 45 states function just fine with one right now. If they want to hold on to their medical tyranny, then they're just going to sacrifice billions of dollars. So I just wanted to put that out there, because there's definitely been some disagreement within the health freedom community as far as that approach. Not running into it a whole lot recently, but because we've made progress in other areas, and I think we all see that. But I just wanted to make that point. So thank you very, very much for having me on. This has been quite fascinating. I hope to keep in touch, and I'm seeing a congressperson in about 7 minutes, so I'll take my leave. Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Rita. If you want to leave your contact information in the chat, you're more than welcome to. Okay, I think Rita left. Maria, you were the next with a question.
Hi, yes. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great.
Amazing presentation. I think this question was kind of for Rita, or more so for Carrie, because it's also about Texas. When we talk about specifics and accuracy, so the affidavit for exemption for reasons of conscience in Texas, right? You fill it out and you check the boxes and get it notarized and turn it in. It only lists the flu type B and not type A. Is that deliberate, or is it implied that checkbox covers both A and B? I was just wondering, how did that happen?
It's implied that happened. I would have to get an opinion from Dishes about why they did the form. They also just released a new version of the form, so I don't know if you're looking at the older version or the newer version, because in our last 89th legislative session, we passed SB 125. Oh, no, that was a different bill. HB 1586, which gave us print from home exemptions. So the Department of State Health Services, Dishes, recently in the last week or so, I guess it was a couple weeks ago, released a new print from home exemption version, and they released new rules that further clarified that healthcare workers and healthcare students qualified for an exemption, which was a big legal win for us also. So I don't know if you're looking at the old form or the new form, but it is just the flu shot is what they're interpreting it as far as I know.
Yeah, because I think I didn't know that they released a new form. That's amazing. I think I'm looking.
You can print it from home now. We saved Texas over $500,000 by not having to have this whole hive of people collecting your information, sending you a fancy form on notarized paper or on numbered paper. Now you can just print it from home. What an amazing concept.
It's amazing. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Charles, you've been made host. I've got to go to this European vaccine event now. So thank you, everyone. I'll put it in Charlie's hands.
Bye, Scott.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Carrie, very much. All you. good to see you again after Dallas.
I know.
And,
I can't wait to see you again. I
speaking
had
of
such a
which,
wonderful
we're going to have
time.
another in Dallas. Yeah, that'll be in April next year.
Okay.
And we'll have Texans for Vaccine figure, prominently there. Okay.
I would love that. I
Thank you all.
can't wait to go. I had a great time.
Yeah, you were terrific there. All right, and maybe this time we need to have you be one of the speakers as well.
I would love to share and help
All
people
right, thank
communicate
you,
better.
everyone. I'm gonna leave, but Charles is okay. Thank you. All right, bye for now.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye.
So, folks, we'll have one more question from the last raised hand, which happens to be moi. So I'll lower my hand and share my screen to review NHF's vaccine campaigns, and help me comment on them is our trustee council from both our organization as well as Physicians for Informed Consent. So we've talked about the generic letter for any state, just expanding different codes to ensure informed consent rights. So on Rita's comment before she departed about using education funds as leverage to make states not discriminate against those with religious concerns about vaccination. We have a more expansive but related bill, and have had this bill, the NICE Act, since a couple Congresses ago, when during the pandemic, Congressman Gomer introduced it. And just as the GRACE Act would use education funding to make states behave, ours says basically if there's going to be federal funding or licensing or mandates behind any vaccine, that involvement by the feds does have to include a right to decline, a national informed consent exemption. So it's similar to the shorter term GRACE Act to fix the religious exemption exclusion in those 5 states that don't have religious exemptions. I can't name them off the top of my head, but big time Democrat states for the most part. And it used to be Republican states too, Mississippi and West Virginia, but they have recently fixed their outlier status in that area. But this bill also would require the Surgeon General to report on studies comparing disease outcomes between the vaxxed and unvaxxed. And I think for those of us in the know, that provision has huge repercussions because, as we know, every private version of such comparison has reproduced the same result. And that is what Senator Johnson released in that hearing last week: more chronic disease among the vaccinated. If that kind of information gets out to parents, exemption demand will only go one direction. So we're working with Miss Miller, Congress lady from Illinois, to get this reintroduced. And Greg, any comments on the NICE Act?
Sure. Well, we have to reach legislators, which we do through Physicians for Informed Consent. We have a very palatable presentation for them. And I really resonate with what Carrie was saying, how you don't blame them. Because when you blame somebody, it closes them off. And I think that Carrie's really showing her enlightenment in this way. I let people know that the word for blame in the ancient language spoken by Jesus Christ is Satan. So if you don't have Satan in the room, that's probably a good thing, huh? And that can be tough, not to blame, because a lot of our instinct is to blame. With regard to the threat levels here, the thing is that a lot of our advocacy, you guys, is 10 years old. We're arguing from points that that are almost irrelevant. The memo already went out. They're switching over to mRNA vaccines. It's going to be the new platform. They're going to make a bunch of admissions that, oh yeah, we know the old technology causes a lot of harm. Don't worry, we're fixing it. They're already shifting. They're already going to the self-replicating vaccines and so forth. So we need to be thinking ahead. We need to be smarter than them, thinking ahead of them, and not get too stoked on our own smaller wins. Even though all those wins are important, we are building up cumulative power. Just always have to keep in mind that the technology is growing at Moore's law, which is a law that applies to transistors, but it also applies to just technology generally. It's going very fast. So when you have the opportunity to get deep and fundamental wins, take it. Thank you.
Indeed. And let me just go through a couple of our other vaccine campaigns so people know that on today's promo, if you scroll down to the campaigns link, among our numerous campaigns, you will find a few directly on vaccines. And a more recent campaign, Greg, as you helped out, was to repeal the PrEP Act, a license to commit crime by health providers if vaccines or any other countermeasure was performed under an emergency authorization. This is a cruel law that has left anyone COVID vaccinated and injured with hardly any redress path to be made whole. Any quick comment, Greg, on the PrEP Act?
Yeah, this is another example of a way that we are trying to make some progress within the current system. It's an entirely flawed system. The question is, will lawsuits be able to overturn the mandatory the vaccination program that's killing our children? Yeah, it'll help make progress. The idea is, you hold some of them accountable, and then they will remove the mandates. And when they remove the mandates, we have a larger population of unvaccinated children. But even then, they're threatening that because they're putting up towers everywhere. They have, again, self-replicating vaccines. They're putting vaccines in things like food. They could be aerosolized. They're spreading and shedding. We've had presenters talk about this sort of thing. So we're in a situation where the house is on fire with mad science, and we're kind of going back to the arsonist and saying, hey, would you be willing to work with us? So often the solution is to absolutely get these people out of power and retool the system itself. So but let's keep making these progress. Let's get any win you can, and I encourage people to just kind of find your zone, find what you're good at and do that. Don't try to be someone you're not. And I think that's a key takeaway point from Carrie, is that even though you can train on this, you might find that you're just not the type of personality who can reach Dems. Just know that about yourself. That's you. Don't even try. That's my personal view.
Yeah, that goes back to my initial lens of receptive, neutral, or resistant, right? And then you get to decide how willing you are to interact with someone who's deeply resistant or not. Some people just don't like to handle deeply resistant folks, and it's good to know your limits. Yeah.
Spot on.
And then it gets to the last two campaigns I want to show. What floats people's boats, Gray, to get them involved often is liability. That is restoring it to pharma for their harms. And what folks don't realize is the same dynamic applies in other health freedom fronts, as with telecom, for example. You can't sue telecom for their harm to humans under the rubric of environmental harms. No one understands, as they get rid of environmental review of telecom towers, that those harms include harm to humans. When we tell staffers that, they go, "Oh my gosh, didn't think of that." They just want to knee jerk against the word environment. And of course, we have biotech trying to get immunity from liability for pesticide companies. You're a lawyer, Greg. I'm sure you like this campaign. Greg, are you there? Well, he may not have great cell reception at his organic farm in the wilderness of rural California. And this gets even more to whatever floats your boat, because this generic email to Congress that I personally really like, when folks are trying to call Congress not to fire RFK, I countered, why don't you send this email instead to get the staffers to stay focused on the goal, which is to reverse chronic disease, which is caused by the pollution of our food, our healthcare, our air, and our water, and finishing with medical freedom. So you may want to lobby on fluoride, pesticides, vaccines, or other iatrogenic harms in the hospital, or pesticides, GMOs, or whatever, we will lobby with you. And with that, I'll stop my share and kind of bring this program to an end. Carrie, do you want to respond to any of those campaigns first, and then we'll invite you to say a final word or two.
I think it's definitely a great idea to be trying to hit at all levels, including the federal level. I mean, the state level is originally designed to be states' rights issue, but we need the federal level also to kind of stop creating these policies that are so detrimental. I think I support all those campaigns. Absolutely.
Wonderful to hear.
It's great work.
And seeing that we're at the end of our hour-and-a-half usual time, I will mention we're going to go a bit deeper next month into what these global demons are up to with their control of all these industries, pharma, telecom, biotech, etc. So this won't be so much what we share with our communication with our adversaries, but it'll be a deep dive for those of us in the rabbit hole. We're going to have returning Thomas Bain, the chemist who uncovered what was really in the remdesivir protocol during COVID, as well as the vaccines. We continue to not really know what's in the COVID shot. Everyone who's an expert kind of argues on that end, as well as what's being dumped on us from above. So that's next month, the third Friday, noon Eastern every month. So thanks, everyone. And Carrie, tell us a final thought and how folks can reach you.
Yes, outreach is a skill that you can learn. And I highly recommend that you do learn, because your ability to reach successfully out to others in a cooperative nature to further your goals will be impossible without proper training and skills. You need to learn how to do this in a way that's productive and connected. And if you're interested in learning more about that or about our organization in general, you can learn about that at TexansForVaccineChoice.com. If you have any specific questions that pertain to me specifically, you can reach out to me at Carrie@TexansForVaccineChoice.com. And if you want to train with us, we do open up our communications class to people that are outside of Texas. And you can learn more about that by going to our website and clicking the icon that says Train with Team TFVC. And that's where you'll find it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. I think the consensus is they really liked what you had to say, because we are struggling to reach the other side or expand our movement. Telecom, for example, we didn't even have a catastrophe like the pandemic to make folks care about it. That's one of the silver linings of COVID, is that it has expanded the universe of vaccine choice in a way that didn't occur before COVID. But we can't let the lack of a catastrophe in our specific issue area stop us from trying to build those bridges. The recording will be up by next week, hopefully at our Rumble channel. Please share the e-list invitation with friends. Let's keep expanding our reach and breadth. And again, next week, we'll be going into the chemistry of this, what seems like a depopulation scheme by these folks up top. Thanks, Carrie. And everyone knows how to reach me if you have any questions or want to be connected to anyone else in this show. So everyone have a great weekend, and thanks so much.
Great show. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.